I'm Jeff Cook.
And I'm TJ Wilson.
And this is Around the Circle.
I'm walking slowly. I'm taking my time. All I could talking is starting to rhyme. I'm letting go of lonely, letting go of strife. I just can't get enough of this beautiful life.
The enneagram is a map of the human personality. It's a tool for navigating relationships. It creates language for what motivates us and helps us look at the way we look at everything else. Most importantly, the enneagram's a mirror because sometimes you need help seeing yourself. My name is Jeff Cook. I'm a philosopher in Greeley, Colorado, and with me is TJ Wilson, businessman, lover of theology, and enneagram ninja.
Hello.
My man.
Good morning.
We are talking about, that's right, we don't normally record in the morning, but we're talking about leadership. It's time to get up.
Yeah, we got to start early, right? That's what the good leaders do.
That's what that I've heard tell. And we have a guest today.
Hooray.
Dr. Jon Singletary is with us, who is Dean of the Diana R. Garland School of Social Work at Baylor University. And this is going to be a good conversation.
Well, we'll see.
Welcome, John.
Thank you. I got up early. I don't know what you guys were doing all morning, but I'm on my third cup of coffee.
I'm on my third too, but I have not been up as long as you. I can almost guarantee that.
It's TJ. I actually also wake up at like 4 or 5 in the morning and go to work. But TJ is a coffee shop owner, so.
Oh, that's a whole different story then.
Yep.
It's required to be a night person, apparently. John just put out a book. His book is called Leadership by the Number. It's a book on leadership and the Enneagram. And so we're going to talk a lot about Enneagram, but TJ and I don't get a chance to talk leadership very often. And so this is going to be some fun new territory for us to converse about. So to get us rolling, John, when thinking about leadership, what are the first things that come to mind? What's the basics on the topic itself?
The first thing that comes to mind for me is not what most people, I think, assume leadership to be. And I'm always saying this to my students. People assume leadership are the big choices we make. Who am I going to hire? How much money do I spend? How do I spend it? What am I responsible for? It's the things that scare people about leadership in their organization, all the responsibilities that come with leadership. But I mean, what I'm trying to argue here and what I firmly believe is leadership is from the inside out. So it's really about who we are, which makes the Enneagram such a great tool for leadership. Because of course it's all about inviting us to be introspective and self-reflective. And that's what good leadership is knowing who you are as you interact with others, as you lead others, as you develop whatever vision or strategy or plan for your work. I think it has to be rooted in that sense of self.
Yeah, there's a really big difference between being the person who makes the big decisions and being someone who actually leads people.
Absolutely. That's right. And you can do both, but I think leadership requires this not only sense of self, but a willingness to see others for who they are as well. I mean, we'll talk some about that today for sure, but wanting to be as tuned in to who others are and what makes them tick and seeing people deeply, I think really makes for quality leadership as well.
Yeah.
In our culture, oftentimes, I think when the term leadership comes up, we immediately think of like a manager overseeing a hired hand. But I imagine that's probably not what goes through your mind when thinking about leadership, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to avoid that. People see it both for the responsibility or the respect that comes with what leadership is. But I often think about, part of this is from a social work perspective, my professional background, it's meeting clients where they are. It's meeting community members where they are. It's that work of empowerment. So I never want our social workers to think they're leading community members by doing things for them or on their behalf. It's coming alongside people. It's learning from the people you're serving. It's leadership with, not for. And then I do work in churches and church-related agencies as well. And it's true there. It's not about the pastor being in charge. It's about that team of leaders really being with the people in the pews. but it is too easy to forget that. And I think people, either because of bad experiences they've had or just the anxiety of that, they're not sure they want to lead. So a lot of our students are passionate about things, but because leadership overwhelms them, or they've seen it done poorly, or they worry about the responsibility, they say they don't want it, or they try to avoid it on the one hand, but they do want it. They just want a different kind of leadership. They want humble leadership. They want respectful leadership, leadership that nurtures and cares. And I think that's what the Enneagram can point us to.
Yeah.
TJ, you're a leader of folks. In your experience of leadership, you obviously are a business owner with a handful of employees. There is that being in charge side of things, but what goes through your mind on the other fronts, the relational fronts of leadership?
I mean, a lot. I agree wholeheartedly with a lot of what Jon's saying and a lot of the things that he's putting forward in this book. And there's the adage of like teach a man to give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day, teach a man to fish and he'll eat for a lifetime. And so there's the element of like, I want to empower people to be able to make their own decisions and to navigate these spaces in appropriate ways. And I look for the type of people that can make those decisions when called upon. And really, over the last several years, particularly since hiring a manager to sort of be in charge of day-to-day stuff while I'm at home with a toddler, one of the big things that I really stress with all of my team is that my job, our job, me and the manager, our job is to make sure that these people are set up for success. Our job is not to tell them what to do. It's to create the space to where they know what to do when they need to do it, and they feel empowered to make decisions and to feel like this space is theirs and that they can operate the way they need to. And a big part of that is knowing like who is going to be good in what spaces and who is going to be able to make certain decisions and who shouldn't be making those decisions and all of that. And yeah, there is a lot of element of knowing my people and investing in them and making sure that they feel like they are part of the whole thing as opposed to just doing what I tell them.
I imagine this is going to be a huge part of our conversation today, but in setting people up for success, the definition of success may really vary between each of the types.
Right.
And as you were talking about spaces. And of course, that's going to be a huge part for nines. And Jon, being an Enneagram 3, which we haven't mentioned yet, is going to be a master on discussions of success, I imagine. We'll bring in that element. But that's what goes through my mind is there's going to be the communal success. What does it look like for us to be successful? And then there's what's it look like for the individual to experience fulfillment and flourishing, in that shared environment in which they're either being led or being a leader. The thing to throw this your way, Jon, the thing that hit me as I was reading was the picture of leadership was less about that manager subordinate, as it were. And what kept coming to my mind was more parenting, of understanding that I'm leading, my child or my children from here to there, and part of that process is a leadership process. Is aside from having staff, any other spheres, parenting, work environments, any other spheres that leadership in your mind really applies to those sorts of relationships?
Yeah, I believe leadership is an opportunity we have everywhere we are. So absolutely, I believe as a parent, we are leading our children into a desired future. Mutually with our partners and spouses, we're co-leading each other and our families. But at the same time, I want our children not to just be followers of me and my wife's and my leadership, but I want them to be leaders. And even at young ages, they might not know what that means. They might not think of it as their own leadership philosophy, but they influence their peers. Peer pressure is kids looking to each other to see what they want to be like and do. And all of that is leadership. So I think we're always nurturing them by leading them, but nurturing them to lead as well. So I feel like all people have leadership opportunities almost all the time. We are communal people. We are always moving and shaping and surrounded by people, even the most introverted of us. And how we do that matters, because that is our leadership. So a lot of social workers, a lot of our students come in and they want to be clinicians, they want to be therapists. And so they say, I'm not a leader, I'm a therapist. Well, no, in your work with clients, you are leading. And in the practice you offer, how you envision who you want to serve, you're saying something to the community about the kind of practice you offer. And all of that, I believe, is leadership.
Yeah.
Everyone is invited to lead.
Yeah. And like anyone who comes to another person for guidance, they're looking for leadership. Like that's part of what leadership is guidance.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Of all things, I heard something just this morning, didn't put it together, but it was on depression levels in Gen Z, and that a lot of it is materializing because of the feedback chains they get through social media. And framing that as leadership, that the whole society is saying this is who you are and how we value you, it's not a good tool for getting that feedback. On the opposite side, and you'll love this, the group in America that reports the lowest amount of depression are the Amish, collectively. And so John, being a former Mennonite pastor, I thought that would be encouraging at least.
Yeah.
I assume that personal, less technology I hear with the Amish might be part of the reason there.
That's right. And ours was an urban Mennonite community, but still
Right.
we were a pretty low tech community. And I think that did nurture relationships. It helped us see each other. And that is something that is hard, I think, for our children who might be younger than whatever the next generation is beyond Gen Z, but so many of our students now, Gen Z, I don't know the generational year categories these days, but thinking
When we ran out of letters too.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We go back to generation AA.
Right.
Generation AB.
That's a bad what is
Yeah, that was bad
it's a-
planning, bad leadership on the naming of the generation.
Did we start with X? I mean, I'm a Gen Xer. I never heard of a letter assigned to generation before my own, but maybe that's my own self-centeredness as a true Gen Xer and an Enneagram 3.
Right.
But I do think this generation that is our own young adults and teenagers, and the influence of social media, who they look for and the kind of leadership they're looking for is it's bite size. It's a reel, it's a post, it's an image that they follow. And that doesn't invite much self-reflection. And I kind of feel that way sometimes about Enneagram memes. You know, you get the shallowest invitation to Enneagram work through a lot of those. And that's not the kind of leadership that we need. It is relational and more high touch. And I'm a big social media fan, but I don't think it's the answer to our leadership struggle. And it certainly contributes to our mental health struggles.
Yeah. Last question on this for me, it ends up being in both of our fields, John, the movement from modernity into post-modernity, I imagine, is all over your work as well. The move from more of a communal understanding of truth and society to a more individual, self-aware understanding, and the differences between how I come to the world and how others come to the world. This is one of the things that really appeals to me about Enneagram, is it gives language for talking about that. But as you were talking just there, that has consistently been something I've wanted to put language to, that as culture proceeds and moves, the needs of the individual, or perhaps the self-awareness of the individual as an individual, I assume, really affects the rest of society. Yeah. There were a society made up of individuals, as opposed to, I'm thinking of like the 1940s generation. I don't think they would have seen themselves that way. It's like, no, we are Americans, you know, and
Right.
and this is the project that we're on. Whereas today, it feels like things have become hyper individualized. I don't know if there's a question there, but do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, we're definitely hyper individualized, and I don't think some understanding of truth as relative is a bad thing. I think who owns truth and the fact that certain institutions took the claim that truth was theirs to offer was a part of the problem of modernity. So a multi-centered postmodern worldview is something I value, but that's not the same. I think that the downside of that, or the risk of postmodernity, is that all truth is so relative that it becomes, what's the word, solipsistic, that it's only individual truth.
Mm-hmm.
I still think truth should be communal and local, but when it becomes so individualized that it's my own, I don't have to listen to you, I'm gonna only listen to these voices, or believe this is ultimate. That's kind of a radical individualist perspective. And one of the things that I think is always interesting about Enneagram, this might be shifting away from this, is people often assume, well, if you're paying that much attention to yourself, isn't that self-centered or self-absorbed? And I tell people, no, it's just the opposite, that we're self-centered when we don't see how our self gets in the way.
Mm-hmm.
That's selfish.
Yep.
To be keenly self-aware makes us less self-centered and self-absorbed. It's just noticing how our ego drives us in hopes that we can be more communally centered and have shared understandings of our values and our truths and what is most important.
And even like returning to that idea of the Enneagram memes, the mimetic sort of temptation toward the superficial level is it's just excuse for bad behavior, so I can continue doing whatever I want, as opposed to working on myself so that I become the best version of myself in order to serve my community better and interact with my family and lead my teams and whatever else.
Yeah, avoiding the traps of personality.
Yeah.
Not giving into them.
Yeah.
All things in prep. I went back and reread one of my favorite leadership books. I really get into like sports ball leadership books, but I read Phil Jackson's 11 Rings books again. One of the first things he said, and it seemed to me to line up perfectly with what you were saying, it was self-understanding in terms of being part of a team is absolutely necessary. You need to understand who you are, and then what's my best contribution to everyone else. I love the idea of Enneagram as a lens into here's where your superpowers are, the things that you do better than anyone else, the thing that you really bring to relationships. And if you have self-understanding, then that can overflow into the places that you're investing all your best energies and the rest.
And coupled with that, the fact that it invites you to see the other side of the coin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Some of our students avoid the Enneagram because they feel it's negative. They want to use Strengths Finder as their tool, which is a great tool. It's a great personality tool.
Right.
And the new version of Strengths Finder will give you your top 5 strengths and your bottom 5 strengths. I'm like, aha, finally Clifton figured out that both sides matter.
Right.
And that's what Enneagram, I think, does best and what sets it apart. Is celebrate your superpower, but don't get self-absorbed that it's the only power that matters.
Right.
Or that it's the right power in every situation. That's denial of the balance that stance work invites, that the Enneagram really invites it takes all 3 centers of intelligence to be our best self, our whole self.
Right.
And our superpower maybe elevates one of the centers.
We're not going to get a chance to dive into a lot of that, but for those interested, a lot of Jon's book goes down those paths. Really worthwhile stuff here in terms of stance work, in terms of identifying and practices for elevating your repressed center, or the places where your type naturally struggles. Lots of really great stuff in Jon's book if you want to get deeper into that material. Also, just another plug that we probably won't get a chance to talk about. For those of you who haven't done like a lot of depthy work on secondary centers, presently, I think Jon's book has the best material on that's in print. I can't really think of a lot of folks who have gone as in-depth into secondary centers in print as your book does. And I was really appreciative of showing, all of us have a primary center 8s, 9s, 1s are the body, 5, 6, 7s are the head, 2, 3s, 4s are the hearts. But each of us have a secondary center, a support center. In Jon's book, talks about how we end up really leaning into that. Really worthwhile stuff. So for what that's worth.
Thank you. That was fun to work on.
Jumping into leadership and Enneagram, there is a point when leading other people where we are trying to, in order to meet them, in order to be good leaders, we might be inviting them to identify their own Enneagram type, or we might be guessing. And TJ and I have routinely said that it's probably a bad idea for us to guess somebody else's Enneagram type. But part of caring for people is meeting them where they're at, seeking to elevate, perhaps in our vocabulary, things that they may care about so that we have connection. Do you have wisdom for coming, say it's the case that, I oversee, say 15 people in an organization. What would be your approach, Jon, to just that situation of meeting people where they're at?
Yeah, great question to wrestle with, because I'm not a fan of imposing the Enneagram on my team.
Right.
I often say I'm not an Enneagram evangelist. I don't want to force religion on people, and I don't want to force the Enneagram on people. If people are interested in it, then I love to talk about it. If people ask questions about how to best lead or how to be self-reflective, here's a tool for you. Now, it's so much a part of our culture here in our university and our school that it's kind of hard to avoid it. So it's kind of in the air, in the water. But if you have a team and it's not necessarily that way, I think inviting people to use a tool like the Enneagram is fine. And so asking people, we're trying to be self-reflective here. Here's a particular tool we use. Let's see what you think about it. But I wouldn't do it I'm with you. I wouldn't do it by offering someone what I think their number is, because I think that short circuits the invitation to introspection and self-awareness. Mm-hmm. If I'm told something, I don't have to be self-aware of it. I don't have to explore what that is for me. You've just told me enough. So fine. If you think I'm a 3, sure, I'll go along with that. I'm a 3, whatever that means. Tell me what that means. And then they're not doing any work. So I think if you can, the way I've tried to invite people to become curious is by sharing what it means to me. So as a leader, I really think this is important. As a leader, I really wrestle with this. A part of that's tied to my personality, I'll say. So as a 3, one of the things I often wrestle with is getting so far ahead of my team that we're no longer on the same page, or we're no longer doing the same thing. So I've got to make sure I allow time to go slow, to really connect. And as a 3, that's not always easy for me. So I think being vulnerable that way, it's both invite some authenticity, some self-reflection, some vulnerability that I think we want in our leaders. And I think my team values that in me when I'm being that way genuinely. And then maybe if they see me saying something about myself and my number, then they'll be curious about their own self, their own personality, their own number. Mm. So then I'll share a workshop, pass on a test, whatever it takes to kind of get them hooked. But I really do try to avoid the imposing a number.
Agreed.
One of the things I'll sometimes do is begin the conversation with either triads or the centers. So I'll just talk to people about, we all have these 3 dimensions of who we are. Mm-hmm. Which one of these do you think shapes your leadership, shapes your work the most? And so if people can sometimes start there, that's a little more tangible than an abstract number.
Right. Yeah. Suzanne Stabile is a big proponent of you can talk about the Enneagram without using the word Enneagram.
Right.
And yeah, as a manager, there's a lot of work that I do that I am not saying the things, any of the buzzwords or using any of the terminology, but I'm still talking about the Enneagram with my people. And yeah.
That's right. Clearly, she taught me that as my mentor. That's something I definitely picked up from her.
Yeah, good.
And I think it matters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because our team does feel like sometimes we impose it on them. It's so much a part of the culture here that it's like, oh, here he comes again. Here they come again.
Yep. That
crazy symbol and all the hoopla that goes with it. So I try to back off of that and make it less about this book they need to read or this test they need to take or this abstract conversation, and more about, well, here's who I am. Here's what I'm trying to be. Here's how I'm trying to live and lead. Here's how I'm trying to care for people. And all of that's rooted in Enneagram work.
And as a leader, how can we interact better?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to connect with you. I want to support you. I want you to thrive. Here's some things I think we have in common. Here's some things that are probably different.
Right.
I see differences as we work together. And people pick up on those easily. I'm not a detail person. And so many of my people are.
Sure.
And they're never surprised when I say something about, oh, I didn't catch that detail, or I missed that number, or I missed that invitation, or that message, or that important fact. They're like, yes, you did. I'm like, well, I've told you before. I'm trying to work on it. I'm sorry I missed it again. Thank you for being a detail person. Right. And then they're like, oh, we do have these differences. We're not all the same. Yeah. There are different and important ways.
As y'all are talking, the thing that's going through my head is there's the leadership one-on-one that occurs, which might be very type specific. And then there's the broader, I have 12 people in a room. How do you think through that? And I suppose in my experience, like teachers can be this way, leaders can be this way, of being able to look at the room and say, a third of these people are going to really struggle with shame and the desire for attention. And a third of these people are probably going to struggle with fear and the desire for safety. And a third of these people are really going to have control issues and struggle with anger. And having that those overriding themes of how am I meeting all the people as I'm presenting can be incredibly valuable. I suppose that's on the center side of bringing in the world. We're going to be talking about stance and how everyone's engaging the world. And again, this is where Jon's book is really great on this. Jon thinks about Enneagram in a real similar fashion to the way TJ and I do. It's a very systematic book, which isn't very common, and it's something that just deeply one that I am. It just really appeals to my heart. I'm like, oh, here it is. The whole system is just laid out. So, second tier book. This is a good middle. Not too advanced. Very much getting into the guts of Enneagram kind of study, but especially on these fronts, great resource. Today, what we're going to talk about. This is Around the Circle. Pick a topic and we go around the circle. Today, we're talking about what we should think about when we are working with other types. What these other types may need from us if we're seeking to lead them. But this also is going to just apply to relationships across the board, it seemed to me. And I'm really excited for this conversation. So we're going to start with aggressive types, assertive types, as Jon calls them. You're the second three, by the way, on our show to say, let's move off aggressive. I think assertive is the better way to communicate myself.
Oh my gosh, that's interesting. I don't mind. I mean, I often say that I am aggressive. So for me, it's not about avoiding that honesty about myself. It really came from students, particularly students of color. To have colleagues of color who are often just sadly described as aggressive by white colleagues who don't want to be threatened by people of color, to tell a Black woman you're an aggressive type does not work well for me or for her. So assertive, I think, works better culturally. Yeah. Individually, people may see themselves as aggressive, but it became part of our racial reckoning. We're doing it as a nation, I think, is making sense of some of these things Enneagram wise as well. So that's a little bit of an aside, but that was really important for me in my own learning.
Yeah, that's an element that I have never thought of before, of calling people of color aggressive. Yeah. And interestingly, this all has to do with how our behavior affects other people and being unaware of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's excellent. That's wisdom. I would love to start with threes. In the book, Jon, you write that if you are leading with a 3, support their relationships they invest in at work. Don't call them out for not being genuine. They likely know this is the case, and don't be patronizing in your recognition of their personal connections. Offer praise for their work, for what they accomplish, and offer praise for the way they support colleagues and seek to connect. Support their feeling efforts as well as where they excel in thinking and doing, and this will encourage them to appreciate this balance that's needed. TJ, what do you hear there?
There's so much about how to, like, we have to, as people who are friends with, leaders of, followers of anything, when we know threes, we know that we have to give them some sort of acknowledgement. We have to give them the gold stars from time to time. And I love this sort of like shifting the place where we put those gold stars. Instead of saying, hey, you did all of these things really well. Yeah, we can do that. But also we should encourage the things that we know are a struggle for them. And it almost feels like manipulation to like praise the thing that we want them to do more, you know, like yes, build relationships, this is so great, do that. And like that, helping to not just encourage but also build up this level of importance that they lend to relationships as part of the work that people are doing. I think that's so good and important and insightful. I love that.
Yeah, to throw this to you, John, the thing that really stands out to me there is that threes want to win, but they want to win in relationships first. And that's what stood out to me there. And I love the idea that you need to note how much they are investing into relationships and to elevate that as a, as a strength.
Yeah, we want to win, but we want to be seen for our winning.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it's enough to win if we're not affirmed for it.
Right.
And that affirmation comes from people we care about. I mean, if I win and strangers praise me, that's fine. But I want the people I love to praise me. I want them to see me. And of course, I've confused things if I think I only get their praise for those accomplishments. But that's the trap or the wake-up call is to see, how is that happening? How am I trying to win for the sake of affirmation rather than just trusting my affirmation? But when I'm working with other threes, it's one thing to say that about myself, but when I'm working for other threes, to see that kind of balanced approach to praise. I can praise you for your critical thinking. Threes are great thinkers because they think quick in order to act.
Yeah.
So I can praise them for their actions, but also for the thinking that goes into those, the strategy. But oftentimes there is something relational at work there because they're often doing these things for the sake of approval from people. So what is it that they're doing that's person-centered that you can praise? That genuine relationship connection often has a feeling orientation. And so much of what I say in all of this is the need for balance in these things. So you're looking for the thinking, the doing, and the feeling. Mm-hmm. You can't just tell a three, go feel, way to feel, keep on feeling. I think you have to tie the feeling to something they're doing or thinking.
Mm-hmm.
John, what goes off in your heart when you experience feedback from your loved ones about how you're winning in relationships? I don't think I've put that together. But that is what I'm hearing from you. Yeah. It's not just that you're winning the relationship. It's that the people you care about see that and tell you and communicate to you that you're winning the relationship. What goes on inside of you in those moments?
Oh man, that's a feeling question you're asking me. I can tell you what I think about it. I mean, it feels good. It's important to me. It helps me. It invites me to slow down to hear that. It invites me to take a deeper connection. So the feeling is a sense of peace or hope or trust in the relationship if the people that I care about are seeing something of value in what I'm doing for our relationships. So whether that's family or colleagues, I think it does invite me to stay in that feeling space when that happens.
Yeah, that's not about the relationship you just won. The trust is actually built with the person who acknowledges and is able to see that you're doing the work, the relational work with these other people. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So, I'm trying to think of an example from our work here. There's several kind of aspirations Baylor has for us in our work. And I have a really close, trusted team of colleagues, of associate deans and program directors. So, and we have a new online program that's kind of going strong. And so when people say, great work supporting your team and building this online program, it's not just praise for the fact that we have a strong online program. It's good job for the team that's leading it. So that is kind of the relationships are a win there too, not just the program. So to celebrate the relationships as much as the product is an opportunity for me, but I think it's an opportunity I can celebrate in over threes.
Nice. I'm curious if you have any thoughts, wisdom, warnings about the potential pitfall of performative feelings in this kind of area. So if I am leading a three and I do this thing that we're talking about, I encourage the relationship winning that I see going on. Is there real danger to that I am essentially creating someone who's going to get really good at looking like they're doing relationships well?
Absolutely. And sometimes, I mean, I've done this work 12, 15 years, and sometimes I still don't know the difference.
Sure.
It's this is so tucked away and egoic need that is subconscious, that when is this truly how I feel, or what I think I feel, because it matters for something else I'm also trying to accomplish in this moment.
Right.
It's tricky space.
Yeah.
And I can say, no, it's the relationship that matters, but the relationship at work is also tied to what we're doing. So it's hard to, sometimes we get feeling and thinking confused for certain types.
Yeah.
But I think threes sometimes get our feeling and doing confused.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is a really important thing for everyone to know, both for those of us who are not threes to know about threes, especially the ones that we're close to, and for threes to know about themselves, is that threes can become very good at performing their feelings, being repressed in that dimension. You call them dimensions in your book instead of centers. I like that. But being really good at making it look like they're good at their feelings, that is a high possibility for threes. And sometimes they don't even know that they're doing it.
And I think it's a risk at the beginning of Enneagram work. So I think when threes are just learning the Enneagram and we're learning that we're feeling repressed and that we need to pay attention to our feelings, we almost automatically do it from that performative perspective.
Sure.
And then the more we try to self-observe it, there's a real tendency to perform it. I'm supposed to be good at feelings. Watch this.
Yeah. So, watch me win at this. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And so Enneagram work sometimes reinforces it negatively, at least in those first couple of steps.
Right.
And I think it takes some either deeper wounding, or recognize some woundings, or being honest about some mistakes we make, and some places where we failed, as Richard Rohr invites us to pay attention to, that the feelings maybe become more genuine, and we're able to share them from a more genuine space. Because y'all have said before, threes also reframe fast, and so to turn something into a positive feeling is not what we need to be doing.
To circle back to the leadership question, I've never thought about this. And as may know, my wife is a three. I have never thought about the three engaging someone else. And my assumption is the three desires the someone else to reciprocate attention, to tell them what you did for me was amazing, outstanding. I'm so thankful. I've never thought about the target for the three being actually someone else seeing the relationship. So say it's the case that the three engages a person at their work, but what they really long for is for, let's say, the leader or the boss to see them engaging the person at their work. And really that's where the desired feedback is coming from, is from the boss who's watching. Look at this interaction. In my mind, I'm always thinking, well, it's just about the interaction. Did that person give you what they needed? And so I suppose on the leadership question, if I'm leading a three, knowing that the three desires me to see how they're engaging other people really needs to be central for me as a leader in their lives, to value that, to elevate that, to speak to that. To affirm that when it needs to be affirmed. That strikes me as really helpful.
Yeah, I have to be really careful when I'm around other university administrators
Mhm.
that I'm not engaging my colleagues for the sake of impressing the
Right.
president or the provost or vice provost or a member of our board or something like that. It make it really about our shared work, our shared relationship, and not about trying to win something.
Yeah.
It's real interesting to me. I'm entirely the opposite. I never think about people who are watching whatever interaction I'm doing, which is actually a default because I can really screw some stuff up.
I need that to rub off on me.
Last word on threes, TJ?
You put a big emphasis throughout everything that I read on it. It seems like there's at least an undercurrent of the focus on the group with threes, and I just thought that was a really interesting perspective. I think so much teaching about threes is about the success of the three, and you seem to be really in tune with the recognition that even in organizations and developing relationships and all that stuff, like not interacting with colleagues in order to impress the provost, part of the success there is not about you. That you need to recognize that the win there is not for you. The win is for the group. You need to be part of that team. And I really appreciate that from the three perspective.
Well, I think it can bring about our best self, our best leadership desire when we are that way.
Yeah.
But I think because we want to be affirmed, we assume other people want what we want. So I assume
Right.
other people want that affirmation. So I do try to extend that to others.
Feels like that ends up being, that can be forced, I suppose, at some level. But the move to 6 there for the 3, I imagine when you're in your sweet spot, that's what you're feeling. Yeah, you're feeling the team orientedness.
Yeah, that trust and connection, that loyalty does shine through, I think, in what I long for our team.
Yeah, it's a good word. 7s. John, you write, when working with 7s in leadership, it's important to listen to how they communicate. The entertaining stories of adventure do include aspects of what they're feeling. Tune into these things. If you force them to connect at a feeling level, or if you force them to be serious about things that make them feel trapped, they'll work harder at finding escape than at doing what you need from them. In connecting to their energy and enthusiasm, try to find small ways where their feelings show up and honor those moments of balance. What do you hear there, TJ?
I love that there's this. It's almost like a cheat code to start understanding how 7s are really feeling. Like if you as a leader are paying attention to what the 7s are communicating, not just the words that they're saying, you can actually get a much deeper insight into what's going on that they're intentionally either not paying attention to or not trying to let out because they're trying to avoid any kind of negative stuff. And being able to just like tune in that way without saying, hey, you're having a bad day, but you can recognize it and sort of adjust to it while it's happening. Like there's this great way to sort of like almost like tricking the 7 into dealing with their feelings without saying, hey, you have to deal with these feelings. If you do it well and you're paying attention. I love that.
It's also I hear I think 3s are much harder to read on this front. I think 7s will show their hand a little bit in terms of like positive spinning the really, something that can be real negative. I can think of a handful of very insecure 7s who spin their insecurity in a very humorous way. But it's if you just pull the humor away, you can see what's going on, perhaps in their minds and hearts. What are your thoughts there, John?
I think as they're trying to avoid that pain, I think you do. I think you can pick up on their frustration, their disappointment. So while they're reframing, you can see what it is they're reframing and what hurt is there, what pain is there. If you're attuned to it, you can see the feelings that are associated with that. Just the disappointment is a feeling. Just the frustration is a feeling. So invite them to sit with that, to reflect on that. I sense the frustration. I think it's great that you're trying to think about this, but I also hear this. And they might not stay there with you long, but at least inviting them to see it for a moment, even if they move on, they've at least been invited to see the feeling.
Right.
That feels like a counseling move on one end. On a leadership move, if a seven's part of your team, is that what's going on in the heart of a seven when you're meeting them in those spaces as a leader?
I don't know if it's because I'm a social worker that I see that connection between what is therapeutic and what is leadership oriented. I mean,
Sure.
it's, a lot of our leadership is so person centered. So it's hard for me to really think about the difference there. But as sevens lead, as they have responsible for big decisions and things don't go right, or they're not able to either have the freedom they want in their work, or when they have the freedom and things don't go right, that's when sometimes you can see these things that they're wrestling with, and invite them to slow down, invite them to notice, to tune in to some of those pieces. And again, a part of what I talk about is the balance between the centers here. So connecting to their energy and their enthusiasm is what's obvious, or their frustration when things don't go their way, and asking, how they might talk about how they're thinking out loud. They're thinking through what they're doing. So it's that thinking and doing piece. So noticing that and seeing where the feelings show up and how they're talking about what they're doing or what they're thinking. Mm-hmm. So looking for the ways that the three centers are working together. So not just focusing on their thinking and their doing, but where in that is there something that's a feeling opportunity that you can tap into.
Yeah, I was trying to pull apart things that you set up as things you shouldn't pull apart. In order to lead, you should engage the sense of self, and so I didn't mean to make one therapeutic on that side, but I think that's spot on in terms of where I've seen sevens really thrive, both as leaders themselves or in a team when sevens can engage the rich, kaleidoscopic side of their emotional life. Human beings who are just fully alive just pour forth from sevens in those space, and that's a great good for the rest of us. And if you can elicit that, as you were saying, I think that can be a huge value.
And I think about I'm thinking in particular about one seven employee that I had once upon a time that there was a need to engage the harder stuff, at least for a moment, and then also offer a pathway out. So like there was often times when like frustration based on other things happening outside of work or difficult customers or whatever. And it's like, let's talk about this for a moment. I recognize this thing was hard, and let's talk about it for a moment. And also let me tell you something to do that's completely different, so you can sort of not escape it, but we're going to stay in this for just a second, but then we will move, I promise. And you can move on from this space. Like there's this almost recognition that we have to be here, but let me give you another thing to do outside of this. And like that, as a leader, there's a need to not just invite the hard work, but also recognize the balance that's needed there, that the hard work has to happen, and then we have to also embrace the other centers.
Last word on sevens?
An example from a friend in an organization down the street, trying to get her to see how feelings matter. And she picked up on the example we often use of in teaching of sevens enjoying planning the next vacation. And what she said was, I enjoy vacations with my husband. And instead of asking her about the vacations, I asked her about her husband. And so, that was an invitation to talk about the intimacy, the relationship.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of what you focus on. Mm-hmm. If you know the dimensions, they all show up in conversations. And I could have talked about what she was thinking about, what she wanted to do. But instead, I use that as a way to say, well, let's talk about how you feel about the person that you want to do these things with, that you're thinking about.
It's a good word.
I like that.
I suppose on the target, I highlight it both for 3, 7s, and as we get to 8s, the balance ends up being a great word for assertive types, for aggressive types, because especially emotionally. TJ and I actually just recently in our stance series ended up highlighting that as a real virtue. The assertive types really can benefit from is moderation. And this is true across the board, as has been said. We are heart, mind, and body, and the more that we can balance all those things in ourselves, that's a great good. And perhaps that's a goal for a leader that would transcend any of the types. Is what does it look like for your people to be engaging all those things into balance? Moves us to the 8s. Jon, you wrote, if you lead with or supervise an 8, you likely already know better than to try to control how they approach their work. But do they feel controlled? Do they feel trusted? Do they feel they can trust you? It's important to be honest with 8s. So tell the truth about what they need to know about their work. Talk about how your work together affects you. When there is conflict, be clear and concise and don't expect a response. Say what you need and then get back to work. Do not expect an 8 to process their work relationship with you. Even if they do not show it, know that your care matters, and so does your commitment to trust in the work you're doing together. What you hear there, TJ?
Yeah, do they feel controlled? Do they feel trusted? Do they feel they can trust you? That was something that really brought up a lot of different things I've experienced working with 8s. Is it's not the control element is so much of what we talk about with 8s, but the trust issue I think is so fundamental with them. And if they can't rely on you to do your part of the job, then you might as well skip it. Just move on, because that is so necessary. Because if they can't trust that you're going to do the work that you're supposed to do, then they know automatically where they stand with you, and they know everything they need to know about the relationship. And so developing this trust is so much about the work that they're doing, but also your side of it, and making sure that they know that you were a reliable worker, and you aren't going to drag them down into the mire of feelings. And when you do have conversations about that, you're gonna then get back to the work.
Yeah, that's also what I hear there. The building of trust and commitment being huge. I find, at least in the life of my child and in people that I work with, seeking to match or even go beyond their intensity in relationship, really bringing a lot of energy to them in the places where they have a lot of energy is one of those places. Being able to elevate, I suppose, is they know they can feel me in those spaces and know whether or not 8s have a wonderful radar for folks who are disingenuous or who are lying to them. And if I can meet them with intensity and with a mixture of honesty, that seems to me to be of huge value. What are your thoughts, Jon?
Yeah, as long as it's not fake intensity.
Right.
We have a couple of relationships that come to mind where either withdrawing type or a reactive, as you say, or dependent type will say, oh, but I'm going to be strong for you, or I'm going to do this for you. And it's like trying to convince the 8 that they're doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't work. Then the 8 is like, I don't know if I trust that. And so not only are you not bringing the intensity naturally, but you're setting yourself up for something that doesn't feel trustworthy. So we can't pretend to meet an 8 where they are. We have to find it within ourselves to truly do that.
Yeah.
So 8s inspire confidence in us if we can allow ourselves to live into it. But I think those things also work together. They absolutely want to know that we care about the work as much as they do, that we're as committed to it. So that intensity does matter, but it has to be genuine, and they have to trust that what we're bringing to the work is as important as what they are bringing, because they're bringing everything. They're all.
And we have to show up with it. It's not like we can't just tell them that we're committed. They have to know it by seeing us do it. Yeah. That intuitional side of them
Yes.
They know already if you're lying.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that. There's what an investment in eights is your action in producing. Yeah, they will intuitively understand when things are getting done.
Oh, they definitely know when things are getting done. And I think that's that, again, the trust and action kind of go hand in hand there. If you say you're doing things, but they don't see it, they're not going to trust you. So it's not just a matter of communicating something that's important to them, but it is living it in a way. And we don't all have the intensity of eights. We don't all have the energy of eight. So it's not a matter of having to be something we're not. But I think when we talk about the work that we've trusted them to do, empower them to do, that we at least talk about our shared work from a place where we show that we have invested in them and in their work.
Jon, you're married to an eight, have some eight children. There's a sweet spot in. It seems to me that it can be a massive investment to put oneself in a position to be protective of the eight, and yet it seems to me a lot of eights want to be strong enough to where they're protecting themselves. And it seems like there's something there where at least I've seen this in eights where it's a massive investment to exert my own strength on their behalf to be something of kind of a shield or a reservoir of strength, as it were, for their sake. But at the same time, an eight, I assume, naturally longs to be strong on their own. I don't know if I'm getting that right, but that's just an intuition I have.
Yeah, they want to be strong on their own, but they don't want to be expected to have to be the strong one in every situation. So they do want us to bring strength and they don't want to have to be self-protective all the time. So they do want us to protect them. I think that's why my wife and I I think our relationship started off so well, because she did see that in me, that trust that I could be a protector for her, even though she was strong enough. It was always kind of a back and forth of, I don't need you, but it's nice that if I were to need you, you're there. And, and she was kind of testing me, is my intuition right? Can I really trust you? Yes, you can trust me. And I think she knew she could, but she did want me to kind of still sometimes to make sure I'm acknowledging how important trustworthiness is, and that she doesn't always have to be the one with all the strength. And it's a little easier for me as a 3 maybe to do that, because I have a lot of energy too. A relationship I really admire is our best friend is a 2, a family we're really close with. The mom is a 2 and her daughter is an 8, same age as our 8 daughter. And that 8 daughter doesn't always expect her mom to protect her in the same way. But when the mom does, the 8 daughter just rests in that. And they have a great relationship because of that.
Almost like trying to figure out ways to communicate. I got your back. I'm not going to carry you, but I got your back.
Right.
Yeah. I love this idea that because 8s will have a felt sense of where they're vulnerable.
Sure.
Want to be strong, but perhaps don't want to be strong everywhere. Is it worth asking the question of the 8s in our lives, where do you need me to be strong for you? That seems like a very exposing kind of question. I don't know how that would get framed otherwise, but that's what comes to mind.
Yeah, I think so. I think it does, man. I think we have to trust the 8s. Are they going to be in a place where they can answer that? And they might, they might not be able to answer. They might say, I don't need anything from you. And that's a sign of your relationship. But if they hear the question, receive it well, trust you and how you're asking it enough to meet you there at that feeling place, then that's a beautiful sign of how you are leading them or co-leading with them, I believe.
So that brings up something we haven't mentioned about 8s, that 8s often have a very small circle of trust. Yeah. And being a leader for an 8 likely will require you to do the work to be trusted before any leadership can actually really take place at a high level.
Yeah, one of the 8s on my leadership team, I think it only works for us because she could see from the outside before she joined us that I was trustworthy. She might not have come to join us otherwise.
Yeah. Well, and even then, I would guess that it still took time for her to sort of rest in that trust.
Yeah.
Like day one, if you had asked her that question, like, what do you need? Where do you need me to protect you? She'd been like, no, absolutely not.
Right.
But day 362, maybe that conversation can actually happen.
Yeah. No, I think that's right.
We're going to pause here in our conversation with Jon. We had so much to talk about with his book, so we'll continue with withdrawn and dependent stances on the next episode.
Well, friends, it would mean the world to us if you share this episode with somebody you love, preferably somebody who's into leadership, who has a job overseeing folks, or a parent, or an educator. These are all great tools for those sorts of folks. As we see every time, we are meeting once a month through 2003 on Zoom. We would love to have you. We've been talking about relationships. You can go to aroundthecircle.org and click on events to find out where we're doing that. And as we say every time also, TJ and I just launched 2 new podcast feeds. One is for beginners called Start Here for people who are looking for their type. And one is called Movie Typing for those who aren't so into the theoretical but like seeing the types discussed through film and pop culture. And so both those are out there, well worth finding. And if you really want to show us love, what would they do, TJ? They would give
Something
us
about stars?
It's all stars. I long for stars, and I boast about it to TJ, who goes, that's great.
Cool.
He's TJ Wilson. He's officially awesome. You got anything else, TJ?
I got nothing, man.
I'm Jeff Cook, and who you aren't isn't interesting.